Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes running fast if you're the Car Chick. Now, here she is.
Welcome back to the Straight Shift. I hope everyone is staying safe and not going too bonkers crazy being at home right now. I was thinking about what to do for this podcast, and I've been getting a lot of questions from people. I don't know, I guess they're stuck at home, and so they have too much time on their hands to think. So I've been flooded with a lot of emails with some really good questions, and I'm happy about that. I don't mind at all. I'm passionate about educating people about cars. So anytime you have a car-related question of any sort, please feel free to reach out to me through my website, thecarchick.com. The contact link has a form on there you can get to me, and I am happy to answer your questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll find out for you. So I thought today would be a good opportunity to take a few of those emails and some of the commonly asked questions that I've been getting lately and answer them via this podcast, in addition to just replying to the individuals who asked them. So let's get started. Jenny from Mooresville asks, is now a good time to buy a car with everything that's going on? Are the dealers desperate to make deals, or am I crazy to think about buying a car right now? The short answer to this question is yes. This is a really good time to buy a car, especially a new one, and for more reasons than just the dealers are desperate to sell cars, which they are, but it's actually a little more complicated than that. As you can imagine, car sales are very, beyond slow right now. One of my best dealers texted me yesterday, in fact, and she was all excited because her dealership had sold 2 whole cars yesterday. And this is a large franchise dealership that normally moves a few hundred cars a month. And she was thrilled because they sold 2 cars yesterday. So that gives you an idea of just how big of a slump the car sales are right now. It's crazy. And, unfortunately, a lot of dealerships, even the big ones, have been forced to furlough their employees without pay because they just don't have the cash flow to keep everybody on their payroll. And, some dealers pay their salespeople 100% commission. Others pay a base salary plus commission. It really depends. But just to give you an idea, your average franchise dealership, so a Toyota dealership, a Subaru dealership, a Ford dealership, whatever, it can cost them upwards of $250,000 a month just to keep the doors open and the lights on. So they're all looking to minimize their costs right now, as most of us are, until we have a better idea of when we're going to get through this situation and over the hump and things can start slowly getting back to normal. But so the answer is yes, they are definitely desperate for sales right now. And that means that the deals can be very good. Another reason it's a good idea to buy right now is there are a lot of great financing options. While the Fed dropped prime to basically zero about a month ago, the traditional banks, I've not seen them drop their car loan interest rates. Car loans, being short-term loans, are tied to the Fed's prime rate. So anytime the Fed moves prime, you typically see auto loans shift in accordance with that. But your traditional banks I haven't seen them drop rates significantly because they're probably, they're desperate for money because they've just had to loan out a whole bunch of it, and they're kind of hedging their bets. They don't want to take on a lot of additional risk right now, so they're not dropping their rates accordingly. But the car manufacturers, captive finance companies like Southeast Toyota Financial, Allied Financial, Subaru Financial, whoever, they are, because they're tied to the automakers, they are dropping rates. And we're seeing some really good deals right now. Some of them are offering 0% financing. Hyundai has one of the best. They are literally offering 0% financing for up to 84 months. That's 7 years of free money to use on your car loan. Granted, I do not encourage people to finance for that ridiculously long period of time, even though it's a 0% rate, just because it puts you at a lot of risk to have the car be upside down, depreciating so much faster than you're paying it off. But these are also extraordinary circumstances. So in addition to the 0% for 84 months, they're also offering deferred payments for 120 days. This is not on every make and model, but it's on some of the more popular ones. So that can be a great deal. Volkswagen is offering 0% for up to 72 months with 180 days deferred payments on a lot of their new models. And that means that your first month's payment, normally your first month's payment is due on the first of the month after you buy the car. Well, in this case, they're going to defer that for 3, 4, 6 months after you sign those papers. So it means you're not going to have a car payment for a few months yet. And that's just because they know that people's cash flow is compromised right now and they still want you to be able to buy cars from them. So it can be a good program. I'm not a big fan typically of deferred payments in long finance terms, but right now sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And it's not a bad idea to take advantage of 0% financing whenever that's available, because as my financial advisor tells me, it's always best to use someone else's money if you can do so for less than using your own money. Keep your own cash in wherever you keep it, preferably not under your mattress, where it can earn a rate of return for you. Another reason that it's a good time to buy cars is that supply right now is high. Dealer inventory, meaning the number of cars that they have currently sitting on their lots or in their pipeline that is, floating over the sea to them or is being produced, has been produced, is on the way to their doorstep. That's really high right now because obviously of the lack of sales. But that situation may drastically swing in the other direction once this epidemic, can't talk today, dies down and these stay-at-home restrictions are lifted. So in other words, once sales pick back up again, the dealers may have an opposite problem. They may suffer a lack of inventory. Now, why is that? Their supply chain. We're going to get into a little explanation on how cars are manufactured. Automakers, most of them have shut down their plants for a period of time. A lot of them are not scheduled to reopen until at least May. So that translates to a couple million cars that have not been produced. So obviously that means there are going to be fewer cars available to buy. And some manufacturers like General Motors have even gone a step further and converted some of their car producing plants to be ventilator producing plants. And that is awesome. And I commend GM and Tesla and the other manufacturers who have converted their factories over to produce the life-saving ventilators that so many areas desperately need right now with the number of seriously ill patients that they have. And this is something that normally happens during wartime. The last time we saw this was literally during World War II, when the automakers and other production facilities stopped producing what they normally produce, and either by order of the government or just because it made good economic sense and good, social sense, they converted their factories over to producing whatever we needed for the war effort. And this is effectively a type of war. So they're doing that voluntarily right now. And thank you, GM, thank you, Tesla, thank you to all the automakers that are doing that right now. But it also means that they're going to eventually have to switch those factories back over to making cars. And that is not an overnight kind of thing. Even for the manufacturers that haven't switched their production at a plant, the plant's still perfectly well set up to make cars. It's not just like turning on a light switch and boom, they immediately start spitting cars off the assembly line. Cars are not built so much as they are assembled. It's kind of like a Lego set. You get a box of Legos. I love Legos. Space Legos were my favorite when I was growing up, and I had a bazillion of them. So you get a box of Legos, and it's supposed to be for, let's just say Star Wars Legos. It's to be able to build a Millennium Falcon. I'm seriously considering buying one of these sets. And you get all the different pieces of Legos that you need to put it together to create a Millennium Falcon. Cars are similar in that they are made up of individual parts that assemble together to make a certain type of car. But not all of those parts. In fact, most of those parts are not actually manufactured at the same plant or even by the automaker to produce that car. So it's like having a Lego set, but your different types of Legos are all in different boxes that come from different places. So car manufacturing and the parts to manufacture the cars are made all over the world. So even if your Toyota is made here in the United States, it's getting parts from Japan and China and Europe and Canada and Mexico to produce that car. And what we're seeing is that even when we can flip the switch and our manufacturing plants will be able to reopen and start building those cars, they may or may not have all the parts that they need to do that. Most of them have been stockpiling those parts in anticipation of this situation. But most auto manufacturing is what's called just-in-time manufacturing. What that means is they don't normally warehouse a boatload of parts and then produce the cars out of that warehoused inventory. In order to keep costs down, they have very tight relationships with their suppliers with very strict processes so that when the car comes down the manufacturing line, the part that the next person is responsible for putting on the car, that part gets to them, sometimes minutes before they get ready to put it on the car. So in other words, the part arrives just in time for it to be used to assemble that specific car. BMW has one of the most incredible just-in-time manufacturing systems. If you've ever been to their manufacturing plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which is just a couple hours down the road from me, it is amazing to see how that works. And I'm a nerd. I have a background, in management consulting, and I did a lot of manufacturing and logistics in my original career. So I know a fair amount about how manufacturing works, and to see how their just-in-time process works, it's absolutely brilliant. But it also means that we are dependent upon those supply chains and the vendors to get those parts to the car manufacturing plants just in time to have those built. And those supply chains have been drastically disrupted. And it's going to take a while for all the pieces of this puzzle, for us to get all the Lego pieces we need at the time that we need them, so that the restart of our car manufacturing happens. It's not going to happen right away. It is not going to happen smoothly. And all of that is going to translate into potentially low supply for a little while for the car makers. And it's going to depend on, different models, and different manufacturers are going to have different supply chain issues depending on where that model vehicle is made. Even within a manufacturer, not all the cars are made in the same place in the world. Some, like Subaru has a plant in Ohio that manufactures the Outback and the Legacy, but then the Foresters are manufactured at a different plant. I think that one's in Japan. So again, we're in a global economy, and it's going to take a while for the entire planet to get things back to normal and get those supply chains flowing smoothly again so that we can just get back to normal. And I don't think we're ever going to get back to normal. I think we're going to find a new normal that works for everybody, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get there. So while we anticipate a upswing in demand once we get on the other side, the downslope of this virus, and they can release the restrictions on all of us having to sit at home, there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. There are people out there who want to buy a car, but they're waiting. Some people that need to buy a car and are waiting. We've got all the people that leased cars 3 years ago, and their lease was due to be turned in, but they got an extension on it because of everything that's happening. Once that lifts, they're going to need to turn in their leased cars and get something new. So the industry anticipates seeing a surge in demand. And that surge in demand is quickly going to eat up the supply that the dealers currently have stockpiled of cars on their lots. And we may see a gap where we literally run out of cars for some makes and models, but the demand is still high. So all that translates to the automakers are warning their dealers, stock up now in anticipation of that swing. And that's tough for the dealers because on one hand, they know that they need to be thinking and planning strategically, but at the same time, they're out of money. They don't have necessarily the cash flow. So the automakers are trying to work with their dealers, and they're giving them deferred payment options in many cases on their floor plan. Let me quickly explain what a floor plan is. Most franchise car dealers do not pay cash for the new cars that they put on their lot, the inventory they get from the manufacturer. Some of them do, like BMW, I believe, makes them buy all their cars in cash. But most of them have what's called a floor plan. And that is they get loaned money from the manufacturer at a very low rate to buy the cars they need for their inventory. And that way they don't have to have $1 bazillion in cash to buy that inventory outright. So in other words, car dealers get loans for their cars just like we get loans for our cars. And so they are working with the dealers on some flexible floor plan options so that the dealers can continue to accept their allocations. That's the number of cars that they get every month from the manufacturer to sell on their lot so that they can maintain those inventories. But a lot of dealers are really resisting that because they just quite frankly don't have the cash, even with the floor planning. Like I said, it can cost upwards of $250,000 just to keep the lights on at the dealership, much less, continue to buy new inventory and stockpile it on their lots where they're completely out of room for cars anyway. So it's just going to be really challenging. The dealers are trying to batten down their expenses so they don't have to furlough too many employees and they can keep, their doors open until we get through this crisis. So totally long-winded answer to Jenny's question, but bottom line, yes, it's a great time to buy a new car. You can get a great deal right now. You can get basically free financing right now. And it's also going to help the dealers with their cash flow now by buying a car. So I'm still perfectly busy in my business buying cars for people. And in some cases, we've been switching from the client wanting to buy a slightly used car. And I did the math and I looked at it and I said, hey, we can buy you a 2 or 3 year old car that, came off lease that's sitting on the used car lot. But for just $2,000 or $3,000 more, we can buy you a brand new one with a full warranty. You can get the 0% financing. And it really, from a strategic decision, it's a better financial decision to do that. I mean, spend a couple thousand more dollars and you're going to get a brand new car with a full warranty and 0% financing. Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer for most people. So that's kind of the direction that I'm going with a lot of my clients right now. And we're still really busy. And on that note, I'm going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some service questions that people have had from Adam from Rock Hill and Kim from San Diego. We'll be right back after this. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of or about finding the right car at a great price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 704-248-8706. That's 704-248-8706. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
The Car Chick is back for more Straight Shift.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Straight Shift. Today I am answering your car-related questions that you have emailed to me over the past couple of weeks. Adam from Rock Hill asks, the Subaru dealer wants to charge me $237 for my 30,000-mile service on my Outback. Do I really need to do that? It seems kind of steep and I really don't want to put out the money right now. Short answer, Adam, yes. You need to do all of the maintenance outlined in your owner's manual, not just to keep up your car's warranty, which you need to do because in order to keep that factory warranty, or even if you have an extended warranty active, you need to do all the maintenance that is listed in the maintenance schedule in your owner's manual, but also to make sure that your car lasts. You really cannot skimp on maintenance if you want your car to last. The 30,000 mile service is more than just a simple oil change. They're also going to change the brake fluid. And this is specific to the Outback, but it's similar for most cars. For your car, obviously look up in your owner's manual in the maintenance schedule and read through that. Understand what service is required at each interval. And this is, of course, assuming that you're following the regular maintenance schedule, not the extreme maintenance schedule. But the 30,000 mile service on an Outback, it is an oil change, yes, but it's also, they change the brake fluid. They inspect all the other fluids in the car, including your transmission fluid, your differential oil on both diffs, because Subarus are all-wheel drive. They got 2 diffs. They're going to rotate your tires. They're also going to inspect all the belts. They're going to inspect the fuel line. They're going to inspect the cooling system, which is a good idea going into summer anyway. And they're going to replace all your air filters, which, let me tell you, your air filter needs changing right now because of the pollen. Oh my goodness, the pollen is almost worse than the virus right now. So they're going to be doing all those things on the list. And you may think, okay, they're just inspecting things. They're looking at them. They're not actually changing anything or replacing any parts. Why are they charging me for that? Well, because it takes time for the qualified mechanic to look at all of those really important systems on your car and make sure they are still functioning normally, that the fluids still look clean, because it depends on how you drive. And there are guidelines for how often you should change those fluids, but it really depends on how you're driving the vehicle. Some fluids may get dirtier faster based on how you're driving than how another person drives. So it's really important that they are looking at those things, so that if they do need to be replaced, you know that instead of waiting until those fluids get super nasty and start causing damage to your car, then changing them. Fluids are something you need to stay on top of. So yes, those milestone services, I like to call them, can cost a little bit more money because they are checking more things. That being said, dealers do charge more typically than your average independent shop. And you're not required to have your maintenance done at the dealership to maintain your warranty. You can choose to have the work done at a qualified independent shop if you prefer. And by qualified, I mean, their mechanics are trained mechanics. I obviously prefer the ASE certified mechanics. The ASE is kind of the certification standard, the testing standards within the service industry. I would never let anybody but a certified mechanic touch my car. Of course, I don't let anybody but my husband, who's a master certified mechanic, touch Maggie, but, that's why I married my mechanic. But, as long as you're doing it at a qualified shop, they may do it for a little bit less money, but make sure they're actually doing all the things that are on your 30,000 mile service. Some shops are better than others, and some may look and be like, oh, it's just inspecting a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to change the oil. They may forget or just choose not to do some of the other items in order to rush through it so that they make more money. I'm not saying that, all mechanics or all shops are dishonest. That's certainly not true, but I've seen it happen many, many times. I've seen it happen at the dealership too. So just make sure that they're actually doing all of the things that are listed at least on that maintenance schedule. I personally think they should be looking at everything on your car, at least as much as they can at each service, just in case something has broken when it wasn't supposed to, or it needs maintenance early. But bottom line, I know it's $237 is a chunk of change, but it's a lot cheaper to pay for your regularly scheduled maintenance and keep your car in good shape than it is to pay to replace really big expensive things like engines and transmissions before their time because you didn't take good care of it. Sort of like your doctor telling you, well, gee, do you have, which is better, making time to exercise for 30 minutes a day or, being dead, so, at an early age. So maintenance is important. All right, the next one, Kim from San Diego, California. Ooh, I love San Diego. It's so beautiful out there. Is it safe to drive if your check engine light is on? Kim, that is a very loaded question. And the answer is, it really depends on why the light is on. But in general, your check engine light is telling you that something is very wrong with the car, with something related to your engine, related to the emission system. That's kind of the big granddaddy of all the warning lights on your car. And it can mean anything from an emissions problem, like maybe you have a bad oxygen sensor, that tracks the amount of unburned oxygen in the car's fuel system. And so when that goes bad and your car doesn't really know kind of how much oxygen it has, it can cause problems with the engine in the future because the computer doesn't know what to do. It could be something as silly as you didn't get your gas cap on tight when you last filled up with gas, or it could mean that there's a much more significant problem. Maybe you've got a bad catalytic converter, you've got bad spark plugs. It can mean a lot of different things. A few years ago, Maggie's light came on because her thermostat had gone bad after, time. And so I had to go replace her thermostat. But you're not going to know exactly what's wrong with the car until you have a qualified mechanic plug what's called a scan tool into your car's computer. It's basically a computer that plugs into your car's computer and tells you what's going on. Kind of like how R2-D2 jacks into the Millennium Falcon to find out what's wrong, and then C-3PO interprets it. And yes, I am a huge Star Wars nerd, but it's a good analogy. So that's what you really got to do. You got to have somebody that can jack into your car's computer and communicate with it and read codes. Because what happens is your car's computer, when it determines there's something wrong because one of the 4 million sensors in the vehicle raised a red flag and said, hey, I got a problem, the car's computer is going to throw a code, and there's a whole list of codes, and they have, a description of what those codes mean, but you can't read those codes without the proper tool to do it. Now, you can take your car over to, AutoZone or Advance Auto Parts or Pep Boys or one of your car parts stores, and typically they have a really cheap scan tool that can plug in, and it can get a vague idea of what's wrong, but it can't read the real deep, detailed codes that give you a much clearer idea of what's going on. It may be able to tell you, hey, it looks like it's an emissions problem. Well, that could be one of 30 different things, but it's not going to tell you which one because it's a cheap-ass scan tool that, costs them like $30, as opposed to the one that your mechanic has, that may have cost upwards of $10,000 to $15,000. So big difference. And the bottom line is you have to have a qualified mechanic with a scan tool. That scan tool has the proper keys to talk to your car. German cars are the most expensive to talk to. So, if you have a German car, you need to take it to a German car mechanic that has the scan tool that speaks German to your car. Your average mechanic may not have that. So be sure you take it to the right type of mechanic and then have them plug it in, read that code, and find out exactly what's going on. And even when they know that, when they read the code, they still may have to perform some diagnostic tests to narrow it down to see exactly which part needs to be replaced to fix the problem. But bottom line, to answer your question about whether or not it's safe to drive your car, here are some things that you need to evaluate when you see that check engine light come on. Is your car acting strangely? Is it kind of bucking, sputtering? Is it losing power? Is it driving abnormally? If it is, pull over at your earliest, safest opportunity because it means something is definitely wrong with the car. You also have to determine if that check engine light, is it on and it's solid, meaning it's just on, period, or is it flashing? If it's flashing, that is an urgent warning that says something is very seriously wrong. Pull over now, safely, check your mirrors. It's like on the racetrack. Check your mirrors, reduce speed, get off to the side of the road, or get off, if you're on the freeway, get to that nearest exit, get off the road, find a safe place to stop the car and turn that engine off before something goes bluey and causes damage to your engine. Pull out your cell phone and call your roadside assistance. And I'm a big believer that everybody should have some form of roadside assistance, whether you have it through the car warranty or you have AAA or something like that. Roadside assistance is an important thing to have these days. If the check engine light is not flashing, some new cars have a different color. It'll be a different color light. If it's a yellow solid light, that's truly a warning, and that's what most cars have. But there are a few cars now that instead of the check engine light flashing when there's a major problem, it will actually turn on red instead of yellow. Same thing. If it turns on red, same as flashing, get off the road, turn off the car, call roadside assistance. But if it's a solid yellow, that means there's a problem, and it could be emissions, it could be something else, but it still is something that needs to be addressed as soon as possible before that problem cascades and creates a bigger, more expensive problem. But it's usually safe to go ahead and drive home than call your mechanic ASAP and get scheduled to bring the car in so that they can get out their scan tool and find out truly what's wrong. If that check engine light came on like right after you got gas, there is a chance that it's just a loose gas cap. Most of your newer cars have a more sophisticated system for telling you that you were just an idiot and didn't get your gas cap on. And let me tell you, I have done that more than once. It'll either be a different light or a different warning message on your infotainment screen. But it may just be something simple as that. But the bottom line is if your check engine light is on, it means there's a problem and it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. If it's flashing or if it's red, it is not safe to drive. Get off the road, turn off your car, call for help. All right, I think we got time for one more. Chandra from Greensboro, North Carolina. A year ago, my Toyota Sienna van had 4 tires changed at Walmart. I had the wheel alignment done at a car dealer, but now my van tires slip when I accelerate or take a turn. I feel them slip every time I take a turn. What is going on? Well, Chandra, first of all, you got your tires at Walmart, which, is probably not the best source for tires. Walmart does not tend to sell the best tires. They typically sell cheap rubber donuts. I mean, it might be from, a manufacturer, like Goodyear, whatever that but it's a brand that they make specifically for Walmart and your other cheapy places. And so they're definitely cheapy tires. So there's a good chance that you just have crappy tires to begin with. You also didn't say how many miles you put on the tires since you got them. Different tires are going to wear out at different rates. We usually say in the industry that, good tires will wear out the fastest. Sometimes they're softer material. Your great tires, unless it's a high-performance tire, because let me tell you, I can wear out any tire really fast, but your high-performance tires are obviously going to wear out fastest. I'm guessing you probably did not have high-performance tires put on your minivan, so it's very likely that it was a cheap tire to begin with. You also didn't say whether or not you've been rotating the tires over the last year. I don't know how many miles you put on your car every year, but it's critical to have your tires rotated. The reason you're probably feeling that slip in the tires when you're accelerating or when you're taking a turn means that they have a worn spot on the tire. And here's why that happens. Your Sienna is a front-wheel drive vehicle, most likely, just because you said you live in North Carolina, and most people in North Carolina have the front-wheel drive ones, not the all-wheel drive ones. It also does not have what's called a limited slip differential. And without getting into the details of what that means, what it translates to is that you have one wheel out of the 4 on your minivan that is the drive wheel, the one that does the work. When you hit the accelerator, that's the wheel that spins to get your car going, and the other ones kind of go along for the ride. So that one's working the hardest. So if you accelerate a little more aggressively than the average bear, shall we say, like I do, that tire's having to work harder and grip harder to move the whole weight of that minivan, and it's going to wear out the fastest. This is why it's critical to rotate your tires so that that one tire is not taking the brunt of all the abuse and doing all the work all the time. If you rotate your tires regularly, and you should do so at every oil change, that helps keep the tire tread, the wear on it, even. So I have this problem in Maggie. Maggie is also front-wheel drive, being a Mini, and she unfortunately does not have a limited slip differential. I'm going to put one on as soon as it's time to change the clutch in her because it drives me crazy. I drive... Okay, you know me. I drive like me. I drive like a race car driver. That's what I am. So I tend to accelerate aggressively when the light changes and goes green, and so that puts a lot of wear on that tire. If you are accelerating and turning at the same time, if you are like in a right-hand turn, because it's usually the right front wheel that is your drive wheel on a front-wheel drive car with no limited slip. So even if you're just making the turn and you're accelerating through that turn, when you're turning right, the weight of the vehicle shifts overall to the left tires. So that means that, and when you're accelerating, the weight shifts to the rear. Therefore, your right front tire is going to have the least amount of weight on it, which is not, really useful when that's your drive wheel. And so what's going to happen is that tire is going to spin without getting a lot of traction, and that shaves down your tread without actually moving you forward. I have to really watch myself because I will spin that tire a lot with the way I drive. So I'm not saying you drive your minivan, like I've driven a Toyota Sienna minivan, but it's still going to put more wear on that one tire. So rotate your tires on a regular basis. Don't necessarily drive like I do. And don't buy cheap rubber donuts from Walmart. I know tires are a big expense, but tires are also one of the most important safety features on a vehicle. And there is a huge difference between just cheap, crappy rubber donuts that hold up the car and an actual good tire. So get them rotated. At this point, it may be, if you haven't had them rotated, the damage may be done and you may have to get new tires again, or at least 1 or 2 new tires, and just keep them rotated because that's going to be the best thing. But if you're feeling that slip on acceleration and in a turn, I guarantee you that the tire on your drive wheel is worn all to heck. All right, folks. I hope the answers to those people's questions was helpful to everyone. And again, if you ever have questions about your car, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I really do care about making sure people are empowered with the right information to make these smart decisions with their cars, to make good financial decisions, and to keep their car in good shape and therefore safe to drive. Next time, I'm going to be taking requests. So if there's a certain topic you want me to cover on the podcast, please also reach out and say, hey, could you cover this topic? I'd like to know more about this. Please do so. I'm here for you guys. And in the meantime, stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
The Straight Shift Podcast is copyright Leanne Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of Leanne Shattuck or The Car Chick.